oil out, 1.3 million barrels per day. That is down from June, certainly, but it is still a lot of oil coming out of the strait for the guys that we don't want the oil coming out from.
So you can certainly see the situation is not what the United States wants, not what the United States thought or tried to negotiate the Memorandum of Understanding. Of course, Iran has a much different view of what that MOU stands for. David Goldman, Czar of the Telestrator, thank you. Thank you for laying this out so well this morning.
Anytime.
John was talking about the latest with Iran. Let's talk about the details of this new overnight. The U.S. military is intensifying strikes against Iran. Over the weekend, hitting more frequently and striking deeper inside the country than we've seen. U.S. Central Command says it hit dozens of targets overnight, part of what very clearly appears now to be an all-out effort to get Iran to stop attacking commercial ships in the Strait of Hormuz. Iran today says it's going after U.S. military targets and is claiming it hit a U.S. base in Bahrain, but CNN has not been able to independently verify that report. But Tehran is also vowing to not stop, saying it's going to keep up strikes on U.S. allies in the region. And Jordan, Bahrain, Kuwait all say that they have been forced to fend off incoming fire. Joining me right now is CNN military analyst, retired Colonel Cedric Leighton, for more on this. Colonel, what should everyone make of what happened this weekend? A weekend of strikes and counterstrikes. People seem to, as Alex Thompson was saying, it's a ceasefire that's been full of fire. But what do you make of what happened this weekend?
Yeah, good morning, Kate. Well, Alex is exactly right. It's a ceasefire by any other name is not what we're seeing here. And, you're looking at this in a way that, clearly points to an intensification of U.S.
Going abroad? Don't let hidden fees ruin the vibe. Enjoy 0% foreign transaction fees on your MerryBank card in-store transactions abroad. With MerryBank, shop smart, save on fees, and enjoy your trip to the fullest. Get up to 315 pesos on your first ever deposit when you download the MerryBank app now.
You need to have open waterways that are free, from a navigation standpoint, and the Strait of Hormuz is a prime example of that. There are other choke points around the world, but this one is a very critical one because, as we famously talk about 20% pre-war, about 20% of the world's oil goes through the Strait of Hormuz on its way to its final destination. So this is a critical waterway, and it's been one that the U.S. has recognized as a critical waterway that needs to stay open for a very, very long time. And when you look at the oil price, you really see that there are, some absolute economic factors that are at play here. And they have, as we previously discussed, political implications as well as geostrategic implications.
CENTCOM also said that the U.S. used one-way attack aerial drones, one-way attack sea drones for the first time now in this war. What does that indicate to you?
Well, they've learned a lot from the Ukrainians. From one standpoint, you're looking at this, with the one-way attack aerial drones as well as the sea drones. We're moving into a different era of warfare. And that is an era of automation, an era of robotics, and of course, drones being part of that. So what we're trying to do is use as many types of weapons that we can without endangering our air crews, our sailors, and all our other military personnel. So the way that the U.S. is fighting this war is it really wants to automate this as much as possible, put as few troops as possible in danger, basically avoiding ground incursions and trying to open the strait without too much damage to our forces and too much risk in terms of casualties.
Do you think we are to a point where people need to accept that the way negotiations are going, the attacks, counterattacks, ceasefire that is full of fire, that Iran will have some control over the Strait of Hormuz going forward that they did not have before this war? Because I'm curious what you see when you look at the military aspect of this, what more the United States can do to get them to stop using that leverage.
Yeah, barring a ground incursion and the taking over of territory on the Iranian side of the Persian Gulf, especially on the Iranian side of the Strait of Hormuz, it really does look like there's going to be some kind of acceptance of Iran's control, at least of the northern channel. Now, that doesn't mean necessarily that's going to happen, but it seems like we're moving in that direction. And if we do move in that direction, that could have grave economic implications for other areas, the Strait of Malacca around Singapore. You've got choke points in the South China Sea. So this is a critical area right here, and this will set a precedent for years to come.
For the globe. Colonel, it's great to see you. Thank you so much. Because now to Iran. Overnight, there's escalating attacks between the United States and Iran as the fight for the control of the Strait of Hormuz continues and intensifies. There's a new analysis from CNN showing that the frequency of U.S. strikes is increasing and hitting deeper inside the country than before. Oil prices are on the rise after the fresh attacks for a second straight night. U.S. Central Command says it hit dozens of targets, part of its push to try to get Iran to stop attacking commercial ships in the Strait. Iran today is saying that it is going after U.S. military targets, claiming it hit a U.S. base in Bahrain. CNN has not been able to independently verify those reports. But Tehran is also vowing to not stop and promising to keep up strikes on U.S. allies in the region. Yes, raising the question once again of what ceasefire? CNN's Betsy Klein, live from the White House with the very latest on this. Betsy, what are you hearing from there this morning? I think it's a big question of does this continue to intensify now for a third day?
Well, what is very clear right now is that this moment is posing a major test for that memorandum of understanding signed just about a month ago. But what's not clear is how and if this is going to get resolved. President Trump said last week that the ceasefire was essentially over, but he did say at the same time that negotiations toward a diplomatic solution would continue. Since then, we have just seen a steady escalation in this conflict. At the root of this issue here is the Strait of Hormuz, that critical oil thoroughfare. And prior to this conflict, no one had full authority or control over that strait. Now, it has become a key point of leverage for Iran since then. Iran says that they control the Strait of Hormuz, they control this waterway, and that they've been launching attacks on commercial vessels in recent days. They say that the passage of ships is not possible without their permission. Now, the U.S. position, according to CENTCOM, is the following, quote, Iran does not control the Strait of Hormuz. It remains an international waterway. U.S. forces are positioned and prepared to keep it that way. Now, we saw overnight, Saturday into Sunday, as the U.S. launched strikes on dozens of Iranian military targets after they say that Iran targeted one of those commercial shipping vessels. Then the U.S. launching another round of strikes overnight, both aerial and sea drones. Now, Iran has subsequently retaliated with attacks on U.S. military bases in Gulf countries. But as we think about a path forward, the White House view here is that there is a division amongst Iranian leadership. There are the moderates who believe that there should be a diplomatic path forward, and there are the hardliners which say that Iran shouldn't have agreed to this memorandum of understanding in the first place. Now, critically, oil prices are continuing to rise after a brief reprieve, up about 10 cents in the last week or so. The price of crude oil about 3% up. So the midterm elections just about 4 months away. This all weighing on President Trump as he weighs his path forward, Kate.
Story is the U.S. strikes on Iran for a third consecutive night, as President Trump says that the U.S. will be the, quote, guardian of the Strait of Hormuz. U.S. Central Command says its forces have completed the latest wave of strikes, and the mission targeted Iran's, quote, ability to attack commercial shipping. Social media footage shows the aftermath of the strikes in southeastern Iran, and President Trump says the U.S. may soon control the Strait of Hormuz.
We are just going forward. We're attacking them tonight. We're taking out all of their capability for anything having to do with the Strait, with the Hormuz Strait. And I think in the end, we will end up just controlling the whole thing.
President Trump also announced that the U.S. will resume its naval blockade on Iranian ships in the coming hours. CNN's Caitlin Collins asked President Trump when the conflict is expected to end.
You've been bombing Iran for months now. Is this just the new normal for the American
Vietnam for 19 years. We're here for 4 months. So I think we've done a lot. We've knocked out their Navy in a period of 1 month. We knocked out their Air Force. Their Air Force is non-existent. We knocked out most of their missiles, most of their drones. We knocked out their drone manufacturing capability, about 92%. Their missile capability for manufacturing, we knocked out 89%. And they have a little capability, but they don't have any capability for us. This is almost a military skirmish.
Oil prices are reacting after President Trump said the U.S. is reinstating its blockade of Iranian shipping in the Gulf. Tehran has already announced it was closing that vital waterway. Oil prices jumped more than 9% on Monday after the announcements. They are still well below their Iran war peaks of above $110 per barrel, but have been rebounding higher in response to the surging tensions between the U.S. and Iran. Joining me now to discuss all the developments is Benjamin Rad, a political scientist and senior fellow at the UCLA Berkeley Center for International Relations, and retired General Wesley Clark, a former NATO Supreme Allied Commander and founder of Renew America Together. Welcome to you both. General, let's start with you. What should happen right now with the Strait of Hormuz? Should the U.S. control?
Iran's blocking it, and so it's a smart thing to put the blockade on Iran shipping back in, and step by step, Admiral Cooper of the Central Command is taking out Iran's military assets that can be used to attack shipping and close the strait by fire. He's got underwater assets, he's got aircraft, he's got the remote controlled boats, the drone boats that can go in there. So he's got a lot of assets. We've spent a long time looking at the intelligence.
We begin in the Middle East, where the U.S. strikes Iran for a third consecutive night, as President Donald Trump says the U.S. will be the guardian of the Strait of Hormuz. U.S. Central Command says its forces have completed the latest wave of strikes, and the mission targeted Iran's ability to attack commercial shipping. Social media footage shows the aftermath of the strikes in southeastern Iran, and President Trump says the U.S. may soon control the Strait of Hormuz.
We are just going forward. We're attacking them tonight. We're taking out all of their capability for anything having to do with the Strait, with the Hormuz Strait. And I think in the end, we will end up just controlling the whole thing.
President Trump also announced that the U.S. will resume its naval blockade of Iranian ships in the coming hours. CNN's Caitlin Collins asked President Trump when the conflict is expected to end.
You've been bombing Iran for months now. Is this just the new normal for the American people?
Well, you know, we're in Vietnam for 19 years. We're here for 4 months. So I think we've done a lot. We've knocked out their Navy in a period of 1 month. We knocked out their Air Force. Their Air Force is non-existent. We knocked out most of their missiles, most of their drones. We knocked out their drone manufacturing capability, about 92%. Their missile capability for manufacturing, we knocked out 89%. And they have a little capability, but they don't have any capability for us. This is almost a military skirmish.
CNN's Paula Hancocks is following developments from Abu Dhabi. She joins us now. So, Paula, what is the latest on strikes across the region, and what's been the reaction there to President Trump's threat to become the guardian of the Strait of Hormuz and charge a protection toll on vessels passing through that critical waterway?
Well, Rosemary, first of all, what we've seen in the early hours of Tuesday morning is a third consecutive night of the U.S. carrying out airstrikes against Iranian military infrastructure. Again, it does appear to have been focused around the Strait of Hormuz, or at least along the coastline of southern Iran. We've seen radar sites being targeted, control surveillance systems. We have also, once again, seen
the response from Iran, targeting U.S. military assets in the Gulf. Jordan says that it has intercepted 4 missiles that were incoming. There has been shrapnel falling in certain areas. And in Bahrain, once again, residents there being woken up to emergency alerts as they believed incoming was on its way. So it does appear to be a familiar pattern now, but we are seeing it escalate, not de-escalate. The US president has informed Congress that the war has effectively resumed, saying limited military action is the way he called it, has resumed, saying that they are defensive strikes at this point. And as you mentioned there, we also are hearing the US president saying that the US will now be what he calls the guardian of the Strait of Hormuz. We have been seeing very limited vessels transiting that critical waterway, which obviously has an impact on the global economy, on oil prices. The US president saying that the US will now be guarding that particular waterway, saying that there will be a 20% surcharge, charging shippers 20% of the value of their cargo in order to protect vessels going through there. Let's listen to what the US president said about it.
Yeah, I want to be reimbursed because we're protecting a very rich portion of the world. We're spending money. And so what we've done is we are going to be reimbursed for protection. We're protecting by the countries that we're helping. For instance, you look at the 5 countries. You have Saudi Arabia, you have UAE, you have Qatar, or Qatar as I always say, you have... And by the way, you have others. You have Kuwait and you have others, and they will do very well, but we think it's appropriate that we don't need them.
Now, there are many questions about how that would actually work. We also know that the Revolutionary Guard said that they targeted 2 what they called rogue super tankers in the Strait of Hormuz. The Emirati officials say 2 of their tankers were targeted. Rosemary?
Paula Hancock's in Abu Dhabi. Many thanks for that live report. Well, oil prices jumped more than 9% after President Trump announced he's reinstating the U.S. naval blockade of Iranian shipping in the Gulf. Tehran had already announced it was closing the vital waterway. Oil prices are still well below their Iran war peaks of above $110 per barrel, but they've been rebounding higher in response. Welcome back, everyone. U.S. forces have wrapped up the 3rd consecutive night of strikes against Iran. Central Command says the 5-hour mission hit Iranian military targets. CENTCOM has revealed that for the first time ever, U.S. forces used sea drones in combat operations the day prior. Now, we are seeing the aftermath of the latest wave of Iranian strikes in the region. Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps claims it destroyed several assets, including a U.S. forces building at a Bahrain airbase. Jordanian state media reports the military intercepted 4 Iranian missiles early this morning.
Plastic envelope. Plastic envelope. Brown envelope. Brown envelope. Brown envelope.
Qatar, Bahrain, and by the way, you have others. You have Kuwait, and you have others, and they will do very well. But we think it's appropriate that we don't need them. You know, we have more oil than any other country in the world. When you add Venezuela, which has been amazing, which has tremendous amounts of oil that we control, when you add Venezuela and everything else, we have more than 50% of the world's supply. We don't need it, but we need it from the standpoint of protecting allies, et cetera, including Israel, including Saudi Arabia, including Qatar, including UAE. We're protecting all of them, and we've done a very effective job.
Just a few weeks ago, the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, said this about the idea of Iran charging those types of fees.
Fees and tolls are the same thing to me. Okay? If you're paying someone to go there, I don't care if you call it a fee or a toll or a donation. It's a toll. That's how we're going to define it. That's international waterway. There isn't a nation on earth that supports having to pay money to go through the straits.
Now, President Trump today explaining why the war has restarted doesn't line up with his
Iranian-backed Houthis in Yemen, John, are threatening to shut down the Bab el-Mandeb Strait in the Red Sea, which they had done in 2023 and 2024. So right now we're in a state of escalation, and whether or not there can be back-channel diplomacy to get it back.
If you're afraid of the dark at night,
comes after an escalation of military strikes between the two countries. The US ramped up attacks, most of which were focused on Iran's southern coast. Tehran says it struck Gulf neighbors Bahrain and Kuwait and Jordan. A top Iranian military official says by cooperating with the US, those countries have increased the risk of war spreading across the region. CNN's senior White House correspondent Christian Holmes joins us now, and these threats about the blockade were more than that. They're happening right now, I think.
That's right. So we've heard from U.S. officials that they are starting the process to reimpose that blockade. And one thing to note is that this was not an easy thing to do the first time. There was no playbook on how to form a blockade for this large of a scale. But it is interesting, if you talk to U.S. officials, they do believe that this is the most, or at least one of the most effective ways they have to exert control over Iran, more so than even those strikes that we are seeing now on a more consistent basis. They believe that this chokes off Iran in terms of any kind of financial gain. And now it seems as though they are going to try to reimpose that blockade, at least according to these officials, the process has already started, in order to bring them back to either the negotiating table or perhaps this is where we land. Right now it seems as though we are careening into territory of that heightened conflict that we saw before the ceasefire. President Trump saying we're going to hit them back harder. He also said that they had a done deal. Unclear there if he was referring to that memorandum of understanding or something else, but that Iran circled back, that they went back on their deal. And he's really been lashing out at the country overall. Now, we had known that President Trump was looking for a diplomatic off-ramp. He did not want to get back full into military escalation, although right now it appears we are getting closer to that every single day. The question, of course, is whether or not, one, this blockade, they actually can escort regular commercial ships through the Strait of Hormuz. That is something that would be considered extremely dangerous. And on top of that, we know that there are a lot of commercial vessels that might not want to traverse through the Strait of Hormuz if they don't have permission from Iran, just because it is more dangerous. The other part of this is this kind of toll or amount of money that President Trump says that the U.S. should be reimbursed for if they do take on this role as the quote-unquote guardian of the Strait of Hormuz. I mean, we should note that U.S. officials have themselves said that nobody should be making money off of a global waterway like the Strait of Hormuz. So how exactly they would impose this and what that would look like are all still ongoing questions.
As President Donald Trump tells Fox News, quote, we are going to hit them very hard after the US attacked dozens of military targets in Iran during another night of strikes. Tehran says its forces responded with aerial attacks towards US bases in this region.
Oil prices surge higher as Donald Trump tries to take control of the Strait of Hormuz. This is what we know. The US naval blockade of ships heading to Iranian ports will resume soon. Another blow, a major blow, to the deteriorating truce between the US and Iran. A US official tells CNN the American military is preparing to restart that blockade along the Strait of Hormuz. Earlier, President Donald Trump said he was reinstating it and claimed the United States will be collecting tolls from ships transiting the strait. With strikes intensifying between the US and Iran, Tehran is warning the conflict could spiral into a regional war. CNN's Kevin Liptak joins us now. It really does feel as if this peace process has gone away, Kevin.
I think it has, and you can kind of see sort of piece by piece as this memorandum of understanding is coming apart. You know, the blockade that the U.S. had in place earlier in the course of this conflict had been one of the last remaining pieces of this memorandum of understanding, and now the president today saying that it would in fact go back into place. And what Central Command says is that the blockade will be reinstated tomorrow, so July 14th, I guess it would be, at 4 p.m. Eastern time. time, and that the U.S. would be enforcing the blockade and all vessels that were transiting ports and coastal areas. So it will be a massive undertaking on the part of the American military. You have, fighter jets, you have naval destroyers who are going to be patrolling this wide swath of the Arabian Sea to try and exert pressure on Iran to reopen the Strait of Hormuz entirely. And I think you kind of see the president here sort of grasping at his options. He is at something of a strategic impasse. It is clear that the gamble that he made with this memorandum, that Iran, by offering them incentives in the form of sanctions relief, would reopen the strait, that gamble turned out not to be what happened. And you see now the president trying to figure out whether to go back to full-scale war, which I still think we are still a step away from, or to allow some of the negotiations to continue, which he is in theory doing, but which they don't seem to be yielding much of anything at all. When it comes to this toll that the president says that he will impose, he is saying that it will be at a rate of 20% of the cargoes, the value of the cargoes that are being shipped. It's not precisely clear how that will be implemented. It also runs counter to what the administration had been saying just a month ago when Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, said that because the Strait of Hormuz was an international waterway, that, quote, no country is allowed to charge tolls or fees on any vessels that are passing through it. And so clearly there is just a massive, I think, lack of mutual understanding between the two sides here about what exactly the agreement that the president signed 3 weeks ago actually stated about the Strait of Hormuz. We heard from American officials on Friday who said that their expectation was that Iran would come out this weekend and say that the strait was open and that they would stop firing on ships that were passing through. And it turns out the exact opposite happened, which launched this whole back and forth retaliation. Now, we should also point out that President Trump, just within the last few minutes, has said that he will be delivering an address to the nation on Thursday, so some days from now. He didn't specify what the topic would be. Of course, he has been focused on Iran, but he's also been focused on all of these other issues in Washington, including the so-called Save America Act, which is this voting reform law that he is insisting be passed through Congress before he turns his attention to any
Now, as strikes between the US and Iran ramp up, oil prices are surging to their highest levels in a month. Here's a live look for you. Gasoline and diesel futures are also way up. They took their biggest single-day jump since early April. What we don't know, will oil prices keep going up if Mr. Trump's plan goes ahead? Paula Newton, I mean, they have to.
heavy airstrikes once again on Monday following a weekend of attacks and counterattacks on both sides. CNN
Wala na nga. Skinless lang at saka ano. Ang galisa. Ang pera na wala ano. Wala. Sorry. Ano?
Ito!
Saan?
Pabili pa!
Ha?
Magkano po ito? Pag-press. Magkano pipres?
Parehas lang.
Sige, ito na lang po akin yan.
Ayan.
Ito po isa. Ito lang po isa. Ito po.
Basta lima. Ano?
Shaki Minaki.
Chicken?
Chicken.
Chicken. Ilan? Ano yan? Ito? Eh. Wow.